healthcare system is broken. I'm sure you've heard a lot about it from Tom when it comes back and tells you, the governor's budget wants to raise the assessment for nursing homes, or wants to cut the Medicaid budget, or whatever the issue of the day is. It's very real. It's very difficult to run the operations that you run on the revenue that you take in. And so what they have done is responded, they being the government, responded in a way that says, you know what, we are going to require more accountability of these healthcare organizations for healthcare dollars, and we're also going to go out and audit, and investigate and find money, and then bring it back into the program. So let's talk about that a little bit. And at the top of page 3, I have the recovery quotas that Tom alluded to. There they are. New York State was given $1.5 billion to right-size healthcare in New York State under the Berger Commission, as you know. And so in exchange for that, New York had to agree to recover this amount in each year in Medicaid revenue, or they have to repay that $1.5 billion to the feds. And you can see in the first couple of years of this program, the state's done pretty well. They really found some money. And it goes up every year, so they have to increase their efforts, but it's pretty ambitious, and they're doing well. The primary agency that's out there recovering the money is the Office of Medicaid Inspector General, or they call it OMIG, O-M-I-G. It's a relatively new agency. It's been around for a couple of years now. It has very strong authority and power given to it by the legislature. And what it did is it took all the audit functions of all the various state departments that impacted healthcare and human services and brought them all together, put it under one roof, and labeled it OMIG. Okay, so, there was always auditing of cost reports and of Medicaid billings and that sort of thing at a much lower level, but now it's all together. So OMRDB's audit activities are under OMIG, and DOH's activities are under OMIG. They're the agency to go out there and audit and collect the money. They've got about 650 employees statewide. A lot of them were just sort of rolled into the new office. Some are new hires. It has civil authority, not criminal authority. It's always a plus. And the danger of an OMIG audit is that what they do is they will come in and they will sample 200 claims for services, 200 dates of services. So they will give you a list of Medicaid dates of service for any number of people, okay, 200 days. Let's look at 4 years, okay? So from, 06, 07, 08, 09, here's 200 dates of service. Please provide the medical documentation for those services. Tell us why you are entitled to that Medicaid rate, okay? Fair enough, right? We get the money. We should be able to support the fact that we're entitled to that money. And then what they do is they say, okay, they look at the medical records, and they, depending on the auditor, depending on their experience, depending on the political winds of the day, say, you know what? We find that 10% of your records don't support the services that you billed for. For instance, you're missing a date on one of those notes. We are, but we've got the day before and we got the day after. Obviously, the nurse just forgot to put the date in, right? Service was delivered, no question about it. Got a note, documents it. This doctor's order wasn't signed. It needs to be signed. How come it wasn't signed? Oh, it was signed. It was a stamp. We don't want a signature stamp for a doctor's signature. Or electronic. We don't want that. We're going to toss that claim out. There's a $300 gone. Okay. And what they do is they come up with an error rate, 5%, 10%. It could be a small error rate. And they then take that error rate and they extrapolate that over all the Medicaid revenue, say, that the nursing home collected for that 4-year period. a big number. It's a huge number, right? And the payback is whatever that ends up being. So I give the example of the VNS of Rochester, which you can look up yourself on the OMIG webpage. They have all the final audit reports now. There's not a lot of long-term care. What is there for long-term care tends to be cost report appeals, as opposed to these audits that I'm talking about. But you can see that basically the government found $566 in error, paid in error. We paid you, VNS, their home care agency, not for profit. We paid you $566, and that was an error because of the physician's stamp, the missing date, the nurse's middle initial, God forbid. I mean, they come up with some crazy things for audit criteria and how they interpret that criteria. So now you owe us $1.3 million. $560, $1.3 million, okay? This is what is going on now out there. And providers are shocked, angry, frustrated.
Doesn't seem quite fair.
There's certainly a fairness argument. We make those arguments. You know, the basis, what they will come back and say is, listen, we can't come in and audit all your claims for 4 years, right? I mean, we'd be here forever. So what we do is we take a random sample of your claims for 4 years. And so then we are, because it is a random sample, we are entitled to extrapolate the error rate over all your revenue for that 4-year period. And if the sample is random, then yes, they are entitled to do that, okay? But often we challenge the sample as being invalid. In other words, why is it that you picked all the dates of service in 2005 when the audit period was this? You know, why did you pick all the high-end claims? Why did you pick all the claims for this particular patient? I mean, there's all sorts of statistical challenges, and we hire experts, statisticians, to help us develop those defenses to challenge that extrapolation. But if you go on the OMIG website, you will see all these final audit reports. And I think I gave the website. I don't change it. It's OMIG, it's like New York, ny.state.omig, something like that. In any event, you will see these extrapolations where they're finding, you know.
On page 2.
Oh, page 2. Okay, good. I was hoping it didn't get dropped when I. Oh, yes, there it is. Oh, I had the reverse. Okay. OMIG.state. It's under point B. It's your legal duties as a board member. You'll see these extrapolations. They're very painful. There is an organization in Johnstown, New York, Community Health Foundation, Community Health Services, home care provider, adult day, basically got hit with like a $2.23 million assessment, not-for-profit. The executive director said, I can't meet payroll. You know, the government said, we're going to take that back from you. We'll take it back at a rate of 50%. We could take 100% right out of your revenue, but we'll take 50% of your incoming revenue from Medicaid, right? A withhold. You can't meet payroll. I mean, what do you want us to do? And a lot of the problems that they had in that instance, and it is true for all kinds of healthcare providers, is the reason that they may not have a specific piece of paper dated on the date that it needs to be dated is because of the actions of third parties. So you have the physician in the community who's supposed to come in and review the care plan every, 62 days or something? And I'm going to be thinking home health and not skilled, 90 for skilled.
After the first 90,
yeah. Yeah, okay. Well, you know what? The doc didn't come in. We tried to get the doc to come in. He knows he has to come in, but, you know, he's got other things going on too. So he came in on the 64th day, let's say, okay, not the 62nd day. So why should we be responsible for a third party? You have a county who has to approve home care services, right? County, their budget is strapped. They don't have the employees to do these approvals. They don't approve the home care. Well, a home care provider says, I got to still provide services to this elderly person in their home. I mean, I'm not gonna stop providing services because the county didn't, they re-up, they reapprove for another, 90 days, 6 months. We're gonna continue the service, and we're gonna bill for it, because you know what, we rendered the service. Why should we, the home care agency, be held responsible for the county's failures? Okay, so these are the kinds of issues that are coming out.
So
Yes.
isn't there sort of an unwritten negotiation process though involved? In another life, I was with an agency that had audits, and that we discovered that if you acted in good faith and showed them some of the errors of their ways, in other words, that that you in fact had showed good faith and had done some things right, there's a negotiation process where they will drop that down a little bit, depending on how far you want to push it. As long as you don't push it too far and try to get too much back. The point being, they're going to get something. They may not take the $1 million, but they'll take a third of it, as long as you agree that you're not going to push it any further. Are you
Yes.
familiar with that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that, you are dead on. That process does occur, and what happens is, all the way through the process, if we get involved on behalf of the provider, with the provider's assistance, we push back with documents. No, you missed this one. Okay, well, no, we've got the day before, the day after, or, we made a supervision visit, you just didn't see it, and with legal arguments, okay? And we do that in the form of like a written brief to them. We do that in the form of face-to-face negotiation with them, and all that is to really just keep driving that number down, 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 as low as we possibly can get it. And depending on the audit team and the auditors, you have more or less luck.
It's a very individualized process, depending on the team.
Yeah, it's about personalities. So we have had success. I just finished an OMIG audit where we had 0 payback. In fact, the state owed us money. They didn't pay it. But as I said, it's a provider that had good documentation. I mean, I can make snowballs, but they got to give me the snow. I mean, I can't make stuff out of thin air. So, you have to have a little something to work with. We say, give us anything. Give us a Post-it. Give us anything you have that shows that the service was provided, that the patient got the benefit of the service, that quality care was given, and we'll work with it. It's sort of like, when you get audited by the IRS. I mean, you find anything, right, to try to get the number down. There's lots of other, and I have to pace myself here, other government agencies. If OMIG was not enough, even though the most aggressive, the most ambitious, the one that has the quotas up above for recoveries, we deal on a regular basis with a lot of federal and state government agencies. U.S. Department of Justice has civil and criminal enforcement authority. We're working with them. We have a whistleblower lawsuit with them in the office right now. The Office of Inspector General, the OIG, that used to be sort of the bad kid on the block, but then, OMIG came in and trumped them. The New York Attorney General's Office, Medicaid Fraud Control Unit, pretty active in Western New York. They have civil and criminal authority. They look at both billing irregularities, but also in the nursing home context, they look at patient abuse, neglect, and mistreatment. Okay, so they have this odd authority. They look at coding and billing, and then in nursing homes, abuse, neglect, mistreatment. So what happens is sometimes if you have an incident in the nursing home, you have a fall, you have a wrongful death or an unexplained death or what have you, Department of Health will get called in, okay? And Department of Health will then make the call to Medicaid Fraud Control Unit and say, I don't know if this is patient abuse or neglect or mistreatment, but you better come in and take a look at it. So you'll often have the 2 state agencies, taking a look at what happened and that kind of thing. And they're, they have criminal enforcement authority, so they're kind of scary when they get involved. But, again, fairly reasonable people to deal with, unlike the Office of the Medicaid Inspector General. And then Medicare, of course, now has these RAC contractors, and they're auditing Medicare providers, and then they get a cut of their recovery. So you can imagine how the way the incentives go, that way. Number 6, there's no specific intent to defraud required in order for a recovery to occur. So most board members will say to me, Susan, you know, if we did something wrong, it wasn't intentional. I mean, we don't have people working for us that are, you know, have their hand in the penny jar, right? I mean, everybody's trying to do a good job. They might screw up, but they're trying to do a good job. These aren't like, they don't have the criminal mindset of, you know, I'm gonna game the system. And I say, that's good, and I believe you, but it doesn't matter, okay? Because there is no specific intent to defraud the system required. It's simply enough if you recklessly, they say it's all lawyer talk, but if you had reckless disregard for what you were doing, if you had no system in place to check whether or not you were double billing, if you had no compliance program in place, okay, if you had no auditing of claims and follow-up, if you had no training, if you would go on and on, right, down that path, well, that's a problem. That's a problem.
What's deliberate ignorance?
That's sticking your head in the sand, and I'll tell you where that came out of. I know that's lawyer language. Here's deliberate. It's a great question. It came out of a case. This is an interesting case. Psychiatrist ran a small practice. His wife was the office manager. He sees patients. She does the billing. It's great. It's a great system. Except that she's billing more than 24 hours a day of his services. So this guy is a type AAA personality. He is working and billing and seeing patients, you know, 30 hours a day, by golly. I mean, what a guy. She's doing the claims. He's giving her the slips, you know, super bills. Bill this, bill this. She, maybe because she's married to this guy, sticks her head in the sand like an ostrich and ignores the red flags, the lights going off, that this is way wrong, okay? That's what deliberate ignorance is. Red flags, you ignore them, okay? And he served some real time in jail. There are defenses. There are legal defenses, honest mistake, inadvertent error. You know, if you always code something the same way and you've done it for years and there have been government directives, don't do it this way, it's wrong, and you just keep doing it, that's a problem, okay? Because that's not really an inadvertent error. At some point that becomes a systemic failure, okay, to correct that problem. And so those defenses are available, but you have to have facts to support them. And there are a whole host of other legal defenses, which I won't go into. New York has its own False Claims Act. We always had the Federal Act, which came in during the Civil War, when the defense contractors were defrauding the federal government. That act is now applied to healthcare. New York now has its own False Claims Act, and the government can recover $6,000 to $12,000 per false claim. So every day of service for a resident, every visit, every home care visit, every physician visit could be potentially a false claim and incur a $6,000 to $12,000 penalty. Okay, huge numbers. The whistleblower piece, that's big. Whistleblowers,